Carol Reynolds sat on the faded, floral-patterned couch that had been a mainstay in her quaint Oregon cottage for years. It was Sunday, her favorite day of the week, when the steady rhythm of her daily life was punctuated by a vibrant digital exchange with her daughter, Olivia. She looked forward to these moments all week, these lifelines that connected her to Olivia's bustling life in San Francisco. Today, though, the minutes trickled away into hours, and the familiar ring of the video call remained absent. The day grew darker, the silence amplifying her rising anxiety. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, Carol mustered her courage and dialed Olivia's number. "Hello, Mom." Olivia answered tersely, her voice icy and devoid of its usual warmth. The lack of video only added to the growing dread in Carol's heart. "Olivia, we didn't talk today. I was waiting for your call," Carol began. Her voice wavered a little, revealing her concern. "What would we talk about, Mom? More lies about Dad?" Olivia spat out, her words sharp and biting. Carol's heart sank. She'd always known this day might come, but she wasn't prepared for the sting of it. For years, she'd kept the truth about Olivia's father's hidden, believing it was for the best. But now it seemed Olivia had discovered her secret. Olivia, Carol stammered, feeling as if the ground beneath her was slipping away. "Don't, Mom. Just don't. You should have told me the truth about that." Olivia's voice was choked with unshed tears. "You had no right to lie to me all these years." The pain in Olivia's voice, so palpable, even through the telephone, pierced Carol's heart. She felt a lump in her throat and her eyes welling up with tears. But she knew this wasn't the time for her emotions. She needed to calm Olivia down and explain her reasons, even if they not seemed so feeble. "Olivia, sweetheart, But before Carol could finish her sentence, the line went dead. Olivia had hung up. The silence that followed was deafening, consuming the once comforting ambience of her living room. Carol clung to the phone, her heart heavy with regret and overwhelming sadness. The secret she'd hoped would protect Olivia had instead driven a wedge between them. As the reality of her situation settled in, Carol understood one thing clearly. She had not just lost a Sunday call. She might have lost her daughter. Before the chilling secret cast a shadow over their bond, Carol and Olivia shared a relationship that was more than just mother and daughter. They were best friends, confidants, and each other's most unwavering support system. From Olivia's first steps to her high school graduation, from her first heartbreak to her first job, Carol had been there, her love and guidance a constant in Olivia's ever-changing world. But behind this nurturing relationship lay Carol's own unspoken sacrifices and a past she had tried hard to forget. Carol had met Richard, Olivia's father, at a young age. He was charming and charismatic, sweeping her off her feet with his grand promises of love and happiness. However, the facade faded away as soon as they were married. Richard was a troubled man, given to violent outbursts and abusive behaviors. He kept Carol isolated from her friends and family, creating a toxic, frightening environment that turned her dreams into nightmares. The day Olivia was born, Carol saw a beacon of hope. She believed that the love for their child might change Richard, soften him. But one terrifying night, Richard, in a drunken rage, threatened to harm Olivia. And that was the turning point. Carol realized she had to protect her daughter, even if it meant severing ties with the life she knew. In the dead of night, Carol packed their belongings, took baby Olivia and fled. She moved to Oregon, changed their last name to Reynolds, and began a new life far away from the darkness of their past. Carol, who was once a passionate historian with a promising career ahead, put her dreams aside. She juggled multiple jobs, from waitressing at a local diner to cleaning houses, making ends meet to provide for Olivia. Her ambition of becoming a professor in history was shelved, replaced with the immediate needs of survival and Olivia's well-being. However, in this challenging journey, Carol never showed her struggles to Olivia. She would return home exhausted, but her tiredness would fade away at the sight of Olivia's smiling face. Instead of bedtime stories about princesses and dragons, Carol would tell Olivia about Cleopatra, Joan of Arc, and other strong women in history, sadly passing on the strength and resilience she wished for her daughter. Carol created a cocoon of love and security for Olivia, making sure that her childhood was as normal and happy as possible. She encouraged Olivia's interest in tech, scraped together enough money for a used computer, and cheered the loudest when Olivia won her first coding competition. For Carol, the biggest reward for her sacrifices was seeing Olivia grow into an independent, successful woman. But every time Olivia asked about her father, Carol would say he died when she was very young, burying the painful truth beneath a well-intended lie. Olivia's life in San Francisco was a whirlwind of code, coffee, and constant challenges, a life she totally enjoyed. However, a seemingly ordinary day brought a twist she never saw coming. A man showed up at her office claiming to be her father, Richard. Richard was older, grayer, and he seemed frail. His eyes held an uncanny resemblance to her own, and she felt a strange pull towards him. He explained that he was dying and had come to seek her help. He confessed that he'd wronged Carol and Olivia, regretting his actions and wanting to make amends. Caught off guard and overwhelmed by the sudden revelation, Olivia didn't know what to believe. The man in front of her seemed so different from the monster her mother described. Torn between doubt and curiosity about the father she thought was dead, she decided to help him. At first, it was simple things, taking him to his medical appointments, helping him with groceries. However, over time, Richard's demands grew, infringing on Olivia's personal life and work commitments. His once gentle demeanor started showing signs of abusive, demanding personality Carol had escaped from. Richard began to manipulate Olivia's sympathy, pushing her to give more of her time, her money, and herself. A couple of months later, realizing the toxic pattern, Olivia decided to cut ties with him. She explained that she couldn't continue to help him at the cost of her own life. Richard didn't take it well. He became bitter, even hostile, accusing her of abandoning him like her mother did. Despite Olivia's best attempts to create boundaries, Richard kept bothering her, showing up at her office, her home, and making incessant calls. His presence became a dark cloud, a constant stressor that made her understand why Carol had decided to leave all those years ago. This was also when Olivia discovered the secret her mother had been carrying. Her father was not dead, and Carol had lied to protect her. After hanging up on her mother, Olivia sat alone in her modern minimalist apartment. The city lights outside offered a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within her. Her mind was a whirlpool of thoughts and emotions, her heart pounding like a drum against her chest. She felt a wave of frustration sweep over her. She was angry at her mother for keeping such a life-altering secret. She was angry at her father for reappearing and disrupting her peaceful existence. She felt betrayed, deceived, and abandoned by the two people who were supposed to protect and love her unconditionally. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes as she looked around her seemingly perfect life. The late coding sessions, the award-winning software she'd helped create, her ascent in her career, all seemed insignificant now. Confusion clouded her mind. Whom was she supposed to trust? Who was telling the truth? Her mother, who had lied to her all her life? Or her father, who had emerged out of nowhere, only to use her sympathy for his benefit? For the first time in her life, Olivia felt utterly alone. She had always been independent, solving her own problems, building her own life, but she had always had her mother's support. Now, that bond was strained, and she felt an unfamiliar sense of abandonment. She began to question everything she knew about her past, her parents, and herself, Olivia felt a cold wave of realization. She was caught between two people who had failed her in different ways. The image of her father as the villain and her mother as the heroine was shattered. Bitter resentment coursed through her. She hated her father for his selfish intrusion and her mother for her well-intentioned deception. This hatred consumed her, leaving a sour taste in her mouth, and a gnawing emptiness in her heart. In the silence of her quaint Oregon home, Carol was droning in despair. The heated conversation with Olivia echoed in her mind, each word stinging more than the last. Carol found herself cursing Richard. His return had not only disturbed Olivia's peace but had also unleashed a cascade of revelations that strained the bond between mother and daughter. She longed to solve Olivia's problems, to swoop in and make everything all right, just as she had done countless times before. But she knew this was different. She couldn't fix Olivia's feelings or erase the deceit. She had helped Olivia build her life, and now it was Olivia's battle to fight. She sat on her porch. Carol's heart was heavy, not only with regret, but also with a secret she had just discovered. Last week, Carol had been diagnosed with cancer. Her intention had been to share the news with Olivia on their usual Sunday call, but now she was torn. She looked out at the thriving vegetable garden, her hands instinctively reaching up to touch the locket around her neck, the one that contained a picture of baby Olivia. Carol couldn't help but think about the irony of life. Just when she needed her daughter's comfort the most, a rift had appeared between them. Tears welled up in Carol's eyes. She wondered if it was even right to burden Olivia with the news of her illness, especially when her daughter was already grappling with so much. Perhaps it was best, Carol thought, to let Olivia live her life, to let her find her own way out of the maze of betrayal and disappointment. The thought of battling her illness alone was terrifying, but Carol was no stranger to sacrifice. She had spent a lifetime putting Olivia first, and she was ready to do it again. However, deep down, she couldn't shake off the feeling of longing, a desperate wish to hold her daughter's hand through her own daunting journey, just as she had done for Olivia throughout her life. In the quiet solitude, Carol was faced with a painful dilemma: to share her life-altering news with Olivia or keep it to herself, to reach out or step back. It was a decision that promised test her courage and the very essence of her motherhood. With a heart weighed down by pain and uncertainty, Carol decided to keep her illness a secret. She started her therapy, braving through each session with a resilience that had been her survival instinct for years. The quiet solitude of her home was often broken by the sound of her own labored breath and occasional sobs. But every time she found herself on the brink of reaching out to Olivia, she would remind herself of her decision and draw upon her inner strength. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in San Francisco, Olivia's world was turning upside down as well. A positive pregnancy test had filled her with a wave of emotions: surprise, fear, and a strange sense of joy. She looked forward to sharing the news with her husband, Tom, believing that it might bring some light into their lives amidst the recent gloom. But when she broke the news to Tom, his reaction was far from what she had expected. Instead of the joy she had hoped for, Tom seemed disconcerted, almost anxious. His startup had been going through a rough patch, with financial struggles and unhappy shareholders. Olivia was aware of the professional storm her husband was facing, but what she didn't know was the magnitude of it. Tom confessed that he had spent the company's money on extravagant parties and had been living a reckless life. The shareholders were suing him for misappropriation of funds, and his reputation was on the brink of ruin. The news of a baby, instead of being a blessing, seemed to be another responsibility he was unprepared for. Olivia was taken aback. She felt a surge of disappointment mixed with anger. She had stood by Tom during his startup struggles, understanding his long hours and constant stress, but the revelation of his irresponsible behavior was a hard blow. She found herself questioning Tom's decisions, his integrity, and their life together. As she tried to process the recent developments, Olivia realized how her life was mirroring her mother's in more ways than she had imagined. She was pregnant, just like Carol had been when she had made the tough decision to leave Richard. She too was now dealing with the consequences of a man's irresponsible actions, and just like Carol, she felt alone and overwhelmed. Tom's struggle with his crumbling startup spiraled him into a dangerous path. He began drinking excessively and resorting to heavy drugs, losing him in the toxic cycle. One day, he confronted Olivia. I can't do this anymore, Olivia, Tom said, his voice shaky, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep and substance abuse. What do you mean, can't do this? Olivia retorted, the exhaustion from her pregnancy visible on her face. I can't. I can't support us, especially not a baby. Tom confessed, his voice barely a whisper. Olivia was taken aback. She felt her world spin around her, threatening to collapse. Is this the kind of man you've become, Tom? The kind that abandons his wife and child when they need him the most?
I'm sorry, Olivia. I just can't.
With that, Olivia left him there, her heart heavy with disappointment, betrayal, and a strange sense of liberation. She packed her things and left the home they had shared, ready to face her next challenge alone. She gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, a tiny bundle of joy that should have made her ecstatic. But as she looked at her face, she saw Tom in her. His eyes, his hair, his nose. The resemblance was uncanny, and it sent a chill down Olivia's spine. In a moment of desperation, she considered abandoning her newborn at the clinic. She talked to the doctors, her voice choked with guilt and fear. Upon hearing Olivia's intentions, they called Tom.
I can't believe you're doing this, Olivia,
Tom accused, a sob catching in his throat. I can't do this alone, Tom. I can't look at her and see you every day. Not after everything you've done. Olivia snapped back, her voice breaking. The conversation was charged with emotion, with accusations and regret flying. It was a painful conversation, one that neither of them had ever imagined they would have. In the end, Olivia made the heart-wrenching decision to leave her baby with Tom. She couldn't bear the idea of seeing Tom in her daughter every day. It was a decision that she didn't take lightly, but she felt it was the best thing for her mental health. With her decision made, Olivia decided to leave the state, to leave behind the life that had caused her so much pain. She longed to start anew, to build a life that was free of the betrayals and disappointments of her past. But as she walked away, Olivia couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt and a strange sense of déjà vu. Her life mirroring her mother's in a way she never thought possible. Little did she know this moment would lead her on a path to understanding and forgiving her mother. Olivia arrived in Oregon, with a heart burdened by guilt and regret. She found her mother's house eerily quiet and seemingly untouched. The vegetable garden Carol had always cherished, now overgrown and untended. Inside, she found Carol looking significantly weaker and frailer than she remembered. Carol's once vibrant eyes were now dimmed. Her skin was pale, and she seemed to have aged decades in just a few months. A thick veil of illness had shrouded the vivacious woman Olivia once knew. Carol's once sturdy hands were now trembling. The strength that had once helped her juggle multiple jobs, nurture a child, and build a new life was now merely a fading memory. There were tubes and machines around her, the beeping of the heart monitor, filling the silent room with a cold, mechanical rhythm. The sight of her mother in this condition was a shock for Olivia. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach, and tears welled up in her eyes. She had come seeking solace, but instead she was confronted with the horrifying reality of her mother's mortality. Despite her weakening condition, Carol managed a weak smile upon seeing Olivia, her eyes lighting up with a glimmer of happiness. Olivia went to her, holding her frail hand, her heart breaking at the sight of her mother's weakening health. "I am sorry, Mom," Olivia choked out, the tears she'd been holding back finally spilling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry for everything." Hours turned into days as Olivia poured her heart out to Carol, expressing her remorse, her fears, and her guilt. She apologized for misunderstanding her mother, for holding grudges, and for living without a word. They shared laughter and tears, reminiscing about the past, mending the fractures in their relationship, piece by piece. Carol, despite her condition, listened patiently, offering words of comfort and strength. In the face of death, she was still the mother who loved unconditionally, forgave easily, and stood as a beacon of hope and resilience. As the sun set, Carol and Olivia continued their heart-to-heart conversation, pouring years' worth of emotions into one magical night. Carol, in her weak voice, proclaimed it to be the happiest day of her life. Olivia, her heart heavy with emotion, nestled against her mother, letting the comforting scent of Carol's familiar perfume envelop her. They lay there, wrapped in the comforting silence, their breaths in harmony. Carol held Olivia close, her frail arms surprisingly strong. Even in her dying moments, Carol's instinct was to protect and comfort Olivia, to ease her worries and reassure her. Carol whispered over and over again that she was happy, each repetition a warm lullaby that soothed Olivia's aching heart. In that moment, Olivia experienced an epiphany. She understood the depth of a mother's love, the sacrifice it entailed, and the overwhelming need to protect one's child. Carol's love and strength was an unspoken lesson, a testament to her unconditional motherly love. But with the dawn came heartbreaking silence. Olivia woke to find Carol's body cold and lifeless, her peaceful expression a haunting reminder of their precious final moments together. The repeated whispers of Carol's happiness echoed in her mind, a poignant melody playing in a deafening silence of loss. Olivia was left with an emptiness that threatened to consume her, but also with newfound clarity and a renewed sense of purpose. The profound lessons she learned from Carol during their last night together were a parting gift, one that would guide her through her future challenges and help her navigate as a mother. Despite her grief, Olivia was determined to honor Carol's legacy, not just as a loving mother, but also as a resilient woman who fought her battles with grace and courage. In the aftermath of the funeral, Olivia found herself returning to San Francisco, driven by a newfound determination. She was ready to step into a new role as a mother, ready to embrace the tiny being who was part of her, part of Tom. She saw her daughter with new eyes, no longer just a mirror of Tom's failures, but a symbol of their shared love, a testament to their past and a beacon for their future. She resumed her life with Tom, ready to support him through his battles just as Carol had done for her. Her strength, compassion, and resilience became the glue that mended their frayed relationship. She stood by Tom as he faced the shareholders, her unwavering faith in him lending him strength and courage. With Olivia's support, Tom was able to negotiate a new agreement with the shareholders. He made amends for his past mistakes, promising transparency and pledging to restore the company's stability. The storm that had threatened to ruin his life was gradually subsiding, giving way to a hopeful dawn. In the end, through their trials and triumphs, Olivia and Tom learned the true meaning of love, forgiveness, and resilience. Their story became a testament to the power of second chances and the undying strength of a mother's love. It was a legacy that Olivia was proud to carry forward, a tribute to the woman who had loved her unconditionally, and a promise of a better future for her daughter. My name is Cameron, and thank you for taking time to listen to my story. As a first-time storyteller, I would appreciate any comments, critiques, or advice you may have that could help me improve. Your feedback is invaluable to me. Please bear with me as I continue to work on my storytelling and my English skills. It's a journey I'm excited to embark on, and I'm thrilled to have you along for the ride. Your support means the world to me. Thank you very much.